I'm healed now, ready to fix us and be your wife again. I read that text 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, but because I wanted to feel something. Anger, maybe. Relief. Even sadness would have been acceptable. But sitting in my kitchen in Louisville, Kentucky, with my coffee going cold, all I felt was confirmation. Confirmation that Bethany hadn't changed at all. My name's Elijah. I'm 35 years old, and I work as a project manager for Ironwood Forge, a metal fabrication company on the outskirts of the city. I've been with them for 8 years now, moving up from the shop floor to overseeing production timelines. It's steady work, honest work. The kind of job where you clock in, solve problems, and clock out knowing you did something real. Bethany left 11 months ago. Not officially at first. She called it taking space. But space turned into silence. Silence turned into rumors, and rumors turned into facts I couldn't ignore anymore. She needed to find herself, she said. What she found instead was a string of men, each one promising something I apparently couldn't give her. Adventure, excitement, freedom from the responsibilities she signed up for when she said, "I do." I filed for divorce 4 months after she disappeared. She didn't contest it, barely even acknowledge the papers, just signed her name and sent them back like she was canceling a magazine subscription. That told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in her priorities. The text came through on a Tuesday evening, just as I was finishing dinner. I'd made grilled chicken and roasted vegetables, nothing fancy, but it was mine, my kitchen, my routine, my peace. I set the phone down without responding. 11 months. She'd been gone 11 months, and now she wanted to waltz back in like time was just something that happened to other people. Like the damage she caused had an expiration date. I thought about calling my buddy Connor. He'd been with me through the worst of it. The nights I couldn't sleep, the days I couldn't focus. The slow process of rebuilding a life I never expected to rebuild. But I didn't call him. There was nothing to discuss. Bethany's text wasn't a question, and I wasn't going to treat it like one. Instead, I finished my dinner, washed the dishes, sat on my back porch and watched the sun go down over the neighborhood I'd bought into 3 years ago, back when I thought I was building something permanent. The thing about silence is that it says exactly what you need it to say. So I let it speak for me. The memories came whether I wanted them or not. I thought about the first time she disappeared for a weekend without telling me where she was going. She came back smelling like cigarettes and someone else's cologne, but she had an explanation ready. A friend's birthday in Cincinnati. Too much wine. Lost track of her phone. I believed her because believing her was easier than facing what the alternative meant. That was 2 years into our marriage. We'd been together for 5 years total at that point. Met at a bowling alley of all places. Her league played right before mine. She was loud and funny and full of energy, and I was drawn to her like a moth to a porch light. I should have paid more attention to how many other moths were circling the same flame. The excuses piled up after that first disappearance. Work conferences that didn't exist. Visits to her sister who later told me she hadn't seen Bethany in months. Girls' nights that stretched into girls' weekends. Each time I told myself it was temporary. Stress. A phase. Something we'd work through together. But you can't work through something when only one person is holding the tools. My mom tried to warn me. She never said it directly. That wasn't her style. But I caught the look she gave Bethany at family dinners. The way she'd squeeze my hand a little tighter when she said goodbye. After Bethany left, my mom just said, "Some people take more than they give, son." Now you know which kind she was. The nights were the hardest at first. Our bed felt too big. The silence in the house felt too loud. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. reaching for someone who wasn't there, and the absence would hit me all over again. But absence has a way of becoming familiar. Weeks turned into months. I started sleeping through the night again, started cooking meals I actually enjoyed instead of compromising on what she wanted, started watching movies she hated, reading books she mocked, living a life that was entirely and unapologetically mine. Her absence, which had felt like a wound at first, eventually became peace. I heard things through mutual acquaintances. She'd been with a guy named Derek for a while, some personal trainer from Indianapolis. That ended badly. Then there was someone from her workplace, a pharmaceutical sales rep. That lasted longer, but ended worse. The pattern was always the same. Bethany chasing something shinier, then wondering why the shine never lasted. 11 months later, the shine had apparently worn off everything else. And here she was, texting me like I was a backup plan she'd left in storage. I didn't respond to her text that night, or the next morning, or the day after that. She sent 2 more messages during that time. The first one said, "I know you're hurt, but please just talk to me." The second said, "I've changed, Elijah. I really have. Just give me a chance to prove it." I read them both, then put my phone away and went to work. The thing about Bethany was that she always believed words were enough. Like saying "I'm sorry" erased what she was sorry for. Like promising to change was the same as actually changing. She'd been doing it our entire relationship, talking her way out of accountability, making just enough noise to distract from the damage she left behind. But I wasn't the same man she'd abandoned. 11 months had taught me that silence was louder than any argument, that walking away was sometimes the strongest statement you could make, that letting go didn't mean forgetting, it meant refusing to let someone else's chaos control your peace. So I stayed silent, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. I'd been seeing someone new for about 4 months by then. Her name was Audrey. We met at a hardware store, of all places. I was looking for a replacement part for my garage door opener, and she was debating between 2 different shades of exterior paint for her rental property. We got to talking in the paint aisle, and something about her just felt easy, comfortable. She wasn't trying to impress me, and I wasn't trying to impress her. We were just 2 people having a conversation. Our first date was coffee at a place downtown. Second date was dinner at a barbecue joint she loved. Third date was a walk along the Ohio River, talking until the sun went down and the city lights came up. She was a physical therapist who'd moved to Louisville from Nashville 3 years prior. Divorced once, no kids, absolutely zero interest in playing games. "I'm too old for that nonsense," she told me on our 4th date. "If we're not being honest with each other, what's the point?" I appreciated that more than she probably knew. Audrey didn't know about Bethany's text. I hadn't mentioned it because there was nothing to mention. An ex reaching out didn't change anything about my present. It was noise from a chapter I'd already closed. But some part of me knew Bethany wouldn't accept silence as an answer. She'd show up eventually. She always did. Not because she missed me, but because she couldn't stand the idea of being rejected. Her ego wouldn't allow it. So I waited, not with anxiety, but with a calm certainty that whatever came next, I was ready for it. The man she left wouldn't have been ready, but the man she was about to find had learned something crucial in her absence. His peace wasn't negotiable anymore. She showed up on a Thursday evening just after 7 p.m. I was in the kitchen making stir-fry when the doorbell camera chimed on my phone. I looked at the screen and there she was, Bethany, standing on my front porch in a dress I didn't recognize, hair done up like she was going to a wedding. She had a bottle of wine in one hand and that same practiced smile she always wore when she wanted something. Audrey was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when she saw me freeze. "Everything okay?" she asked. I showed her the screen. My ex-wife. Audrey's eyebrows rose, but she didn't panic, didn't demand an explanation. She just nodded slowly and said, "The one who texted you last week?" "Same one." "You didn't tell her about me?" "Didn't tell her anything, haven't responded at all." Audrey considered this for a moment. Then, with the kind of calm that had drawn me to her in the first place, she asked, "What do you want to do?" That question mattered more than she probably realized. Not "what should you do?" or "what are you going to do about this?" but "what do you want?" She was giving me space to decide for myself, without judgment or pressure. I watched Bethany on the camera. She rang the bell again, then checked her reflection in the window beside the door. Same old Bethany, performative down to her bones. "I don't want to talk to her," I said finally, "but she's not going to leave until someone answers." Audrey set her phone down. "Want me to get it?" I almost said no. Protective instinct, maybe. the male urge to shield the people you care about from the people who hurt you. But Audrey wasn't asking for permission to fight my battles. She was offering to be present, to stand beside me in a way Bethany never had. "You sure?" I asked. "I'm sure." She slid off the stool and adjusted the hoodie she was wearing, one of mine, a faded gray thing from a company softball tournament years ago. "She's going to find out about me eventually, might as well be now." I nodded. "I'll stay in here, watch through the camera." Audrey walked toward the front door and I turned back to the stove, pretending to focus on dinner while my phone showed me everything happening at the entrance. Bethany was smoothing her dress when the door opened. She'd clearly rehearsed something. I could see her mouth start to form words before she even registered who was standing in front of her. Then she saw Audrey. It was like watching a computer crash in real time. Bethany's prepared smile faltered. Her eyes went wide. She looked past Audrey, trying to see into the house, then back at the woman in my hoodie. "Can I help you?" Audrey asked, her voice polite but firm. Bethany's mouth opened and closed. I'm looking for Elijah. This is his house." "I know whose house it is," Audrey said. "He's busy right now. Can I take a message?" The silence that followed was worth every second of the 11 months I'd spent rebuilding my life. I watched through the camera as Bethany's face cycled through emotions she couldn't control. Confusion came first. She genuinely hadn't expected anyone other than me to answer that door. In her mind, I was still sitting alone in this house, pining for her return, waiting like a loyal dog for its owner to come home. The sight of another woman, comfortable, relaxed, wearing my clothes, short-circuited that entire narrative. Then came the anger. I saw it flash across her features, quick and hot. Her jaw tightened. Her grip on the wine bottle shifted. She wasn't used to being caught off guard, wasn't used to walking into situations she hadn't planned for. But she recovered quickly. That was one thing Bethany had always been good at: adaptation. She was a master of reading a room and adjusting her performance accordingly. "I'm Bethany," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Elijah's wife." "Ex-wife," Audrey corrected gently. "He mentioned the divorce was finalized months ago." I couldn't see Bethany's reaction directly, but I could imagine it. The slight twitch at the corner of her mouth, the way her eyes would narrow just a fraction. She hated being corrected. "Right," Bethany said slowly. "Ex-wife. And you are?" "Audrey. I'm his girlfriend." That word landed exactly the way it should have. Girlfriend. Present tense. Current. Real. Bethany's composure cracked again. "How long have you two been?" "A few months," Audrey said. "Not that it's really any of your business." From my position in the kitchen, I felt something settle in my chest. Pride, maybe. Gratitude. Audrey wasn't being cruel, but she also wasn't backing down. She was holding space for both of us with a quiet strength that Bethany had never possessed. I thought about all the times I'd made excuses for Bethany. All the times I'd smoothed over her rudeness to my friends and family. All the times I'd convinced myself that her selfishness was just passion, her manipulation just communication. I'd spent years bending myself into shapes that made her comfortable while she never once returned the favor. Audrey didn't ask me to bend. She met me where I was. "I need to talk to Elijah," Bethany insisted. "I drove all the way from—" "He knows you're here," Audrey interrupted. "He chose not to come to the door. I think that tells you what you need to know." Through the camera, I watched Bethany's face go pale. Not from shock this time, from realization. She'd assumed that showing up in person would force my hand. That I'd open the door, see her standing there, and fall back into old patterns. That the power she'd always held over me was still intact. But I wasn't that man anymore. And she was standing on the porch of a house that no longer felt anything like the one she'd left. "Just tell him I'm here," Bethany said, her voice smaller now. "Please, I just want to explain." Audrey glanced back toward the kitchen even though she couldn't see me from the doorway. It was a gesture of respect, checking in without making a scene. I stayed where I was. That was my answer. Audrey turned back to Bethany. "He's aware you're here, And he's choosing not to engage. I'm sorry you drove all this way, but there's nothing else I can do for you. I expected Bethany to argue, to push past Audrey and storm into the house, to cause a scene the way she always did when things didn't go her way. But she didn't. She just stood there, wine bottle hanging at her side, looking at the doorway like it had personally betrayed her. 11 months, she said quietly. He couldn't even wait 11 months. Audrey's voice was steady. You left him. What did you expect him to do? I expected him to. Bethany stopped herself, swallowed. I expected him to understand that I needed time. Time for what exactly? That question hung in the air. Through the camera, I could see Bethany searching for an answer that would make her look sympathetic. An answer that reframed her departure as something noble. A journey of self-discovery rather than what it actually was. Running away from commitment to chase temporary highs. She couldn't find one. I made mistakes, she finally admitted. I know that. But I came back. I'm here now. Doesn't that count for something? That's not for me to say, Audrey replied. But showing up unannounced, expecting him to drop everything. That's not how you make amends. That's how you make demands. Bethany's mask slipped completely. I saw the real her, the version she kept hidden behind charm and calculated vulnerability. Her eyes went cold. Her posture stiffened. You don't know anything about our relationship, she snapped. You're right. I don't. All I know is the man he is now, and he's happy. He's peaceful. Whatever you two had, it wasn't giving him that. I turned off the stove and moved closer to the hallway, still watching through my phone. Part of me wanted to step in, to have the final word, but I realized I didn't need to. Audrey wasn't fighting for me, she was standing with me. There's a difference. Bethany took a step back. The wine bottle shook slightly in her hand. This isn't over. He owes me a conversation. He doesn't owe you anything, Audrey said simply. But I'll tell him you said that. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Bethany turned and walked back toward her car. A sedan I didn't recognize, probably borrowed or rented. She didn't look back. Didn't try one more time. Just got in, started the engine, and drove away. Audrey closed the door and walked into the kitchen where I was standing. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. And I meant it. Thank you. She shrugged. Nothing to thank me for. She needed to know where things stand. Still, you didn't have to do that. Audrey stepped closer and wrapped her arms around my waist. I wanted to. You've built something good here, Elijah. Something real. She doesn't get to walk back in and pretend it doesn't exist. I held her for a long time. Outside, the street was quiet. The evening settled around us like a blanket. And somewhere in the distance, Bethany was driving away from a house she'd abandoned, finally understanding that the door she walked out of was closed for good. I didn't feel victorious, didn't feel vindicated. I just felt settled, like a stone that had been tossed around for years finally finding the bottom of a river. Peace. That's what I felt. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, it wasn't fragile. Bethany came back one more time, 3 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon. This time I answered the door myself. She looked different, thinner, tired. The polish she'd worn before was gone, replaced by something rawer. She'd been crying recently. I could see the redness around her eyes. I just need 5 minutes, she said. Please. I leaned against the doorframe. Say what you need to say. She took a breath. I messed up. I know that. I threw away something good because I was bored or scared or I don't even know anymore. I convinced myself there was something better out there. And when I found out there wasn't, I thought I could come back like nothing happened. You could have called, I said. Months ago, before the divorce was final, before I signed the papers and moved on. I know. But you didn't. No. Her voice cracked. I didn't. We stood in silence for a moment. The autumn air was cool, carrying the smell of fallen leaves and distant rain. "I'm not angry at you anymore," I said finally. I was for a long time, but that passed. What didn't pass was the lesson you taught me. What lesson? That I deserve someone who chooses me. Every day. Not someone who comes back when everything else falls apart. Bethany wiped her eyes. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself. For once, she just listened. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said. "But it's not here. Not anymore." She nodded slowly. "Goodbye, Elijah." "Goodbye, Bethany." She walked back to her car. I watched her drive away, and then I closed the door on that chapter of my life permanently. Audrey and I got engaged the following spring. Nothing elaborate. Just a Saturday morning in my backyard, with birds singing and coffee going cold between us. I asked, she said yes, and we both laughed at how simple it felt. How right. I heard about Bethany through mutual friends occasionally. She moved to another state eventually, tried the same patterns with new people. The last I heard, she was living alone, struggling to hold down a job, still chasing something she couldn't name. The consequences of her choices hadn't come in one dramatic moment. They came in the slow erosion of every relationship she touched. No stability, no roots, just a string of burned bridges and closed doors. I didn't take pleasure in her struggles, but I also didn't lose sleep over them. She'd made her choices. The results were hers to carry. My mom visited a few weeks after the engagement. She sat on my porch and looked at the garden Audrey had started planting along the fence line. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs, things that took time, things that needed tending. "This is good," my mom said quietly. "What you have now, it's real." "I know," I said. She squeezed my hand the way she always did. "I'm proud of you, son. Not everyone finds their way back to peace after someone tries to take it from them." That night, Audrey and I made dinner together. Nothing special, just grilled salmon and a salad from the vegetables we'd grown ourselves. We ate on the back porch, watching the fireflies drift through the darkening yard. I thought about the man I'd been 11 months before Bethany's text arrived. Lost. Hurt. Wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. Sometimes healing isn't about getting answers. It's about realizing you stopped needing them. "You'll die poor and alone, Elliot, just like you deserve." Those were the last words Megan said to me before she slammed the door of our apartment in Columbus, Ohio. I stood there holding a cardboard box filled with whatever she decided I was allowed to keep. A few shirts, some old textbooks, a photo of my mother. My name is Elliot. I was 32 years old, recently divorced, and according to my ex-wife, destined for nothing but misery. She took everything. The car we financed together, the furniture I helped pick out, the savings account I contributed to for 6 years. Her lawyer was sharper than mine, and I was too exhausted to fight. So I signed. I let her walk away with the life we built because I didn't have the energy to prove I deserved any of it. The worst part wasn't losing the money or the apartment. It was how she looked at me at the end, like I was less than nothing, like marrying me was a mistake she couldn't wait to correct. I moved into a one-bedroom place on the east side of the city. The walls were thin and the heating barely worked. I took a job stocking shelves at a grocery store on the overnight shift. It paid $11 an hour, and I was grateful for it. That first week, I worked from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. My back ached from lifting boxes. My hands were raw from breaking down pallets. But I kept showing up because I didn't know what else to do. Megan had already moved in with her new boyfriend, a guy named Derek who sold commercial real estate and drove a black sedan that cost more than I made in a year. She posted photos of their vacations online. Cancun, Miami, some resort in the mountains I couldn't even pronounce. I didn't look at her social media because I wanted to. I looked because I couldn't stop. Every post felt like a reminder of how far I had fallen. One night during my break, I sat in the back of the stockroom eating a sandwich I packed from home. My coworker, A kid named Travis, who was maybe 19, asked me what I used to do before this. I told him I worked in software development for a few years after college. Built some projects, had ideas. Never quite made it. He nodded and went back to his phone. I didn't tell him the rest. That I once believed I was going to change the world. That I had a partner who believed in the same thing. That somewhere along the way, life got in the way. I finished my sandwich and got back to work. I met Megan when I was 24. She was beautiful, confident, and full of opinions about everything. I thought that meant she was smart. Turns out she was just loud. We dated for 2 years before getting married. I was working at a mid-sized tech company at the time, pulling decent money and thinking I had a future. But the company folded a year into our marriage, and I never quite recovered. I bounced between freelance gigs and contract work. Some months were good, most were not. Megan made it clear she expected more from me. More ambition, more success, more proof that I was worth her time. She never said it directly, but she didn't have to. The way she sighed when I came home, the way she stopped asking about my day, the way she started spending more time with her friends and less with me. I tried. I really did. I applied to dozens of jobs. I took courses online. I pitched ideas to investors who barely gave me 5 minutes, but nothing stuck. And the more I failed, the more Megan pulled away. By the time she filed for divorce, I wasn't even surprised. I was relieved. What hurt was the way she told everyone I was the problem, that I was lazy, that I had no drive, that she wasted her best years on a man who couldn't provide. Her friends believed her. Her family believed her. Even some of my own relatives seemed to take her side. I stopped defending myself. What was the point? The night shifts became my refuge. I didn't have to explain anything to anyone. I just stocked shelves, broke down boxes, and waited for the sun to come up. My manager was a woman named Gloria, who never asked personal questions. She just handed me my schedule and let me do my job. I appreciated that more than she knew. One night around 1 a.m, I was restocking the cereal aisle when I caught my reflection in the glass door of the freezer section. I looked older than 32, tired, worn down. I thought about calling my mother, but she lived in a nursing home now and didn't always remember who I was. I thought about calling my brother, but we hadn't spoken in years. I thought about calling anyone. I didn't. I just kept working. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered a project I built in college, a program that was supposed to change everything. I wondered what ever happened to it. Then I pushed the thought away and kept stacking boxes. It was a Tuesday night, or maybe Wednesday morning. The hours blurred together on the overnight shift. I was in the back loading dock sorting through a delivery of canned goods when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around expecting to see Travis or one of the other stockers. Instead, I saw Julian. He looked the same as he did 12 years ago. A little older maybe, a little grayer around the temples. But still the same guy who sat next to me in computer science class and stayed up all night coding with me in the campus library. I blinked. I thought I was dreaming. "Elliot," he said, "I've been looking for you for 3 weeks." I set down the box I was holding. "Julian, what are you doing here?" He smiled, but there was something serious behind it. "You remember that program we built senior year? The one we submitted to that innovation competition?" I remembered. We called it SyncWave. It was a data synchronization tool designed for small businesses. We thought it was going to make us rich. It didn't. We graduated, went our separate ways, and I forgot all about it. "What about it?" I asked. Julian stepped closer. "A company called North Peak Engineering acquired it. They've been using a modified version of our original code for the last 8 years without telling us. When I found out, I hired a lawyer. We sued, and last month they settled." I stared at him. Settled for what? He pulled out a folded piece of paper from his jacket and handed it to me. $71 million. And according to the original agreement we signed back in college, you still own 35%. The numbers didn't register at first. I read the paper 3 times before the words started to make sense. 35% of $71 million. That was just under 25 million. I leaned against the stack of boxes behind me. My legs felt weak. This is real? I asked. Julian nodded. I've been trying to find you for weeks. You're not exactly easy to track down these days. I looked around the loading dock, the pallets of canned vegetables, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the faded name tag pinned to my shirt. I've been here, I said quietly. Just surviving. Julian put a hand on my shoulder. You don't have to survive anymore, Elliot. You won. We won. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stood there, holding that piece of paper, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. For the first time since Megan walked out, I believed that maybe I wasn't destined to fail. Maybe I wasn't the man she said I was. Maybe I never was. I folded the paper carefully and put it in my pocket. Then I looked at Julian and said the only thing I could think of. Let's go somewhere and talk. Julian took me to a diner a few blocks from the grocery store. It was the kind of place that served breakfast all night and didn't ask questions. We sat in a booth near the back and he ordered us both coffee. I listened as he explained everything. How he discovered that North Peak Engineering had been using our code. How he tracked down the original files and proved ownership. How the lawsuit dragged on for 18 months before they finally caved. They tried to bury it, Julian said. Claimed we abandoned the intellectual property. But I had the original agreement, the one we both signed in the dorm room, dated and notarized. I remembered that night. We were so sure we were going to be millionaires. We signed the document like it was a formality. Then graduation came, life happened, and I forgot it ever existed. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Julian shrugged. I didn't know where you were. You dropped off the map after you got married, changed your number, deleted your social media. I spent months trying to find you. I nodded. Megan had convinced me to cut ties with most of my old friends. She said they were holding me back. I believed her. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. You're here now. That's what matters. We talked for hours. Julian told me about his life. He had a wife and 2 kids now. He ran a small consulting firm in Denver. He never stopped believing that Synthwave would amount to something. I kept the files, he said. Every version, every update. I knew someday it would matter. I thought about all the years I spent doubting myself. All the times Megan told me I was worthless. All the nights I spent stocking shelves and wondering what went wrong. Meanwhile, Julian believed, he fought. And now, because of him, I was about to become a millionaire. I asked him what came next. We signed the settlement paperwork, he said. The money gets deposited into escrow. Your share gets transferred to whatever account you designate. Should take about 2 weeks. 2 weeks. After everything I had been through, 2 weeks felt like nothing. When I got home that morning, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall. I thought about Megan, about Derek, about all the things she said about me. I pulled out my phone and opened her social media page. The most recent post was from the day before, a photo of her and Derek at some upscale restaurant, holding glasses of wine and smiling like they had the world figured out. The caption read, "Blessed to be living my best life with someone who actually has ambition." I read it 3 times. Then I put my phone down and smiled. She had no idea what was coming. I didn't call her. I didn't message her. I didn't tell anyone. I just went to work the next night like nothing had changed. Gloria handed me my schedule. Travis asked me if I wanted to grab breakfast after the shift. I said sure. For the next 2 weeks, I lived like a man with nothing. Because I wanted the moment to be perfect. I wanted her to find out on her own. I wanted her to feel the weight of every word she ever said to me. And I was willing to wait. The settlement went through on a Friday afternoon. Julian called me from Denver to confirm. "It's done," he said. "Check your account." I was sitting in my apartment when I opened the banking app on my phone. The balance had changed. Where there used to be $412, there was now $24,850,000. I stared at the screen for a long time. I thought about calling someone. My mother, my brother, anyone. But I didn't. I just sat there, letting it sink in. The next morning, I walked into the grocery store and handed Gloria my resignation letter. She looked surprised. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm more than okay." She didn't ask any more questions. She just shook my hand and wished me luck. I walked out of that store for the last time and never looked back. The first thing I did was move out of my apartment. I rented a place on the north side of Columbus. It wasn't flashy, just a nice 2-bedroom with a view of the river. I didn't need much, I never did. I bought a used truck, paid cash. I donated most of my old clothes and bought a few new things that actually fit. I started eating better, sleeping better, feeling like a person again. Julian flew out to visit me a week later. We sat on my balcony and watched the sun set over the water. "You doing okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Better than okay." He smiled. "You deserve this, Elliot. You always did." I didn't know if that was true, but I was starting to believe it. Megan still didn't know. As far as she was concerned, I was still the loser she left behind. I saw her post another photo with Derek. Some beach vacation with matching sunglasses and overpriced drinks. I didn't feel angry anymore, I just felt free. I hired a financial advisor, a woman named Charlotte who came highly recommended. She helped me set up investments, trusts, and a plan for the future. I wasn't going to blow this money on nonsense. I was going to build something real. I thought about what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't need to work, but I wanted to. I started sketching out ideas for a new software project. Something that could help people. Something that mattered. Julian offered to partner with me again. I said yes. We started meeting over video calls twice a week. Planning. Brainstorming. Building something new from the ground up. It felt like college again. Except this time, I knew what I was capable of. One night I was walking through the grocery store where I used to work. Not to shop, just to remember. I passed by the loading dock where Julian found me. I thought about how different my life was now. A kid in a store uniform walked by pushing a cart of boxes. He looked exhausted. He looked like I used to look. I stopped him and handed him a $100 bill. "Keep going," I said. "It gets better." He stared at me like I was crazy. Then he smiled. I walked out into the night and didn't look back. The news broke 3 weeks after the settlement. A tech blog ran a story about the Synkwave acquisition and the lawsuit that followed. They mentioned Julian by name. They mentioned me. The headline read, "College project leads to $71 million settlement for 2 Ohio graduates." I didn't share the article. I didn't post about it. I just waited. It didn't take long. Megan's sister called her. Her mother saw it on the news. Her coworker forwarded her the link. By the end of the day, my phone was buzzing with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Old friends, distant relatives, people who wanted to reconnect now that I was worth something. I ignored most of them. But I didn't ignore the message from Megan. It came at 11 at night. A single text. "Is this real?" I didn't respond. She called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. Finally, I picked up. "Elliot," she said. Her voice was shaky. "I just saw the news. Is it true? Did you really get $25 million? I paused. Then I said, "Yes." Silence. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. Why would I? She didn't have an answer for that. "I made a mistake," she said. "I was wrong about you. I was wrong about everything." I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. The city lights sparkled in the distance. I thought about all the nights I spent alone, stocking shelves, wondering if I would ever feel whole again. "You told me I would die poor and alone," I said. "You told everyone I was a failure." "I didn't mean it," she said. I was angry. "You meant every word," I said quietly, "and now you have to live with it." She started to cry. I didn't feel sorry for her. "Elliot, please, can we just talk? Maybe we can—" "No," I said. "We can't." I hung up. The next few days she tried everything. texts, emails, even a letter sent to my old address that got forwarded to me. She apologized. She begged. She blamed Derek for influencing her. I didn't respond to any of it. I heard through mutual contacts that Derek left her a month later. Apparently, he wasn't interested in a woman whose ex-husband was now richer than he would ever be. The irony wasn't lost on me. Megan moved back in with her mother. She lost her job after showing up drunk to work 3 times. Her social media went quiet. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just kept building my new life. Julian and I launched our new company 6 months later. We called it Verilyn Global. It was everything Synkwave should have been. We hired a small team of developers. We rented office space in Columbus. We started making a difference. I thought about Megan sometimes, not with anger, not with pity, just with the quiet understanding that some people only see your value when it's too late. She lost everything because she bet against me, and I gained everything because I never stopped believing I was worth more than she said. The last time I saw Megan was at a coffee shop near downtown Columbus. I didn't plan it. I was just picking up an order when I noticed her sitting alone by the window. She looked different, thinner, older. Her hair was shorter, and she wasn't wearing the designer clothes she used to love. She saw me before I could leave. "Elliot," she said. I nodded but didn't sit down. She stared at me for a long moment. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying. "I heard about your company," she said. "It's doing well." "It is." She looked down at her hands. "I think about what I said to you every day. I was so wrong." I didn't respond. "I lost everything," she said quietly. "Derek, my job, my apartment. I'm living with my mom now." I thought about all the nights I spent alone, wondering if I would ever climb out of the hole she helped dig. I thought about the words she threw at me like weapons. "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said. And I meant it. Not because she deserved my sympathy, but because holding on to anger wasn't worth my time anymore. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Do you think you could ever forgive me?" I considered the question carefully. Then I said, "I already have. But that doesn't mean I want you in my life." I picked up my coffee and walked out. She didn't follow. A year after the settlement, I stood on the balcony of my new home overlooking the river. Julian was inside with his wife and kids. We were celebrating the first anniversary of Verilyn Global. The company had grown faster than we expected. We had contracts with 3 major corporations and a waiting list of clients who wanted our help. I hired 12 employees, most of them young developers who reminded me of myself at that age. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who stocked shelves at 2 in the morning and wondered if he would ever matter. That man was gone. Megan never recovered. The last I heard, she was working part-time at a retail store and struggling to pay off the debts Derek left behind. She stopped reaching out after our conversation at the coffee shop. I hoped she found some kind of peace, but I knew it wasn't my responsibility to give it to her. Julian walked out onto the balcony and handed me a glass of iced tea. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "More than okay." He smiled. "You know, I always believed in you, even when you didn't believe in yourself." I looked out at the water and thought about everything I had been through. The failures, the humiliation, the long nights alone. None of it broke me. It just made me stronger. Megan bet against me and lost everything. I bet on myself and won. That was the only justice I ever needed. I raised my glass to the sky and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well.